What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another Golden Record track breakdown, and today we are talking about the final poetry track off of the album, Happiness, featuring Galindo. Now, for me, this is my personal favorite poetry track off the whole thing, and it's because it kind of subverts expectations a little bit. The name of the track is Happiness, but it's not happiness that you might be, it's not commercial happiness, it's not bright, fun, kind of bubblegum twinkle happiness. It's more of a contented, sort of at peace happiness. So the whole idea with the album, going back to our four emotional tent poles of fear, love, anger, and happiness, is ultimately you sort of experience them kind of in order. I was pulling a lot from personal experiences and things of that nature, and ultimately I found at this, 28 years of life, that happiness, true happiness, sort of comes from the experiencing of everything else. The times that I felt happiest in life has been after dealing with something that's made me feel scared or in love or, angry deeply. Almost every time, you come out on the other side of those feelings, and more often than not, I found happiness is the emotion there waiting for you. So that's kind of the idea behind the whole track. Let's go ahead and dive into Ableton and talk about what's going on with the production of this one. So right at the top, looking at things inside of Ableton, you can see that there aren't too many elements in this one. In fact, we only really have 5 kind of melodic sections with this loop, chords, our pizzicato, strings, cellos, and this little keys section. But then a lot of the heavy lifting is being done by our atmospheric section. So let's go ahead and dive into that for a minute first. So at the top, we've got this river noise as well as at the end, and this river and the wind chimes at the end really help to ground us in more of our environmental world and pulls us out of happiness and into Foo's Flower Shop. If you think about how we had added in those like dinks, the space dinks during fear, that gets us out of fear and into hurricane season, bringing in some of those thematic elements. Same idea here. We have these rivers and these wind chimes that are way more present in Foo's Flower Shop, but we bring them in here to help sonically gravitate us towards that world as well and stitch them both together so that when you're listening top to bottom, it's a seamless transition. So we'll just sort of listen to some of these things, hop through them. We've got this river. Nothing too complicated. Classic kind of river sample. Oh yeah, what a lovely babbling brook that is. We've got these birds, and the birds are kind of interesting. So the birds at the top, just your standard kind of birds. But then as you can kind of see in this waveform, a few times I reverse the sample. And there's a bit of an auto pan on them just so that the birds are kind of moving from side to side inside of the stereo field. But these reversed birds add a kind of a sort of sci-fi, ethereal, otherworldliness. There's something not quite right about them, but also they still sound close enough to the same sample that you're like, oh yeah, birds. And if you really, unless you're listening to them like front to back, it's hard to hear the switch. Forward birds. Backwards birds. See, it's subtle, but there is enough in there that it just adds an extra little textural thing. It changes it up a bit. Then we've got these park sounds that are just that, and some, sounds of people in a park. Some noise, some basketball court noises. We got a vibrating neighborhood to match the poem. And then again, a little bit of this river earlier in, some of this outdoorsy stuff. It's just like kind of crunching on leaves and things like that. So that makes up all together. That makes up our atmosphere, which really creates this nice sort of sound library that we can just exist in. Same wind chimes that I used in 32nd Street. So there's a cohesiveness amongst the entirety of the album that some of these sounds and ideas that I introduced in one track, they come up regularly again. So that's our atmosphere. Let's go ahead and move into talking about more of our melodics. So right at the top, like as I said, it's mostly comprised of just these 5 bits that layer throughout the track. So we have this main melodic loop that we hear right at the very beginning. And there's already kind of a bit of nature sound in that, which I further, just layered in with this atmosphere. But, there's a simplicity, there's a calmness to it. And again, this is not bubblegum commercial happiness. This is bright. This is, at peace. This is a contented happiness. And this loop just really helped drive that home for me. And so then we bring in these chords, and again, all with about our layers and everything, the chords and the loop, they come together in a way that it really almost creates one full sound. You'll see what I mean when I play them together. Like they sound right together. They belong together. And the chords are a little more electronic to add more of that electronic flavor that we've had throughout the whole album. But together there's a sense of peace to them that I found quite nice and relaxing. And it created a great sonic environment for this poem to exist in. So then we bring in these pizzicatoed strings, and if you're unfamiliar with what pizzicato means, that's just picking the strings, finger plucking the strings, and it's a wonderful sound. It came from our BBC plugin through Spitfire, and it's just a really great quality to it. You can see we've got a bit of reverb on there, and that throughout the piece, these pizzicatoed strings get a bit louder, but for the most part, they're just playing this melody, this nice kind of simple, homely, I feel like I can see the sun shining and feel the breeze on my skin, from this kind of a melody. And then we bring in our cellos, and they sync up so well with the pizzicatoed strings, again from the BBC Orchestra plugin through Spitfire. And they just really help to tell this kind of peaceful story. Like there's a sense of, just like full sort of, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm prepared for whatever is coming next. I'm ready for it, and I'm fine with it. There's a lot of sense of I'm fine with whatever is happening around me. And then these twinkle keys come in as well. Lovely sound, and they add more to that sort of electronic, kind of spaciness atmosphere that we've brought in throughout the whole album. There's always an element of that in every single song, and the twinkle keys really come in together to make that happen. So when you listen to we'll just listen to these twinkle keys mixed with the cellos and the pizzicatoed strings, and then we'll bring in our main chords and keys on top of that. But it's just on their own, they sound quite gorgeous. I just love the way they all come together. Yeah, it's great. We bring in our loop, and it creates, a little room in the low end. Our chords. And it's quite peaceful. I love it. Like I want to exist in the world of this song at any point. If I could just dive into it, one blue skidoo, we can too kind of thing, just like hop on in and exist there, I'd love to. So that just leaves us with the poem. Now with this poem, you can see that this is Happiness 3. So all of the other poems, with the exception of Anger, we did 2 takes. We had sort of the initial take without any instruction, and then I would give Louis some feedback, and then we would do our second take. And that was the process that worked well for Fear and for what's after Fear? Love. But then for Anger, we talked about, we have that, we went back and did that third take after we recorded everything to get the big, loud, angry take, the really big one that we ended up using. And then similarly for this third take, the first one, it was great. He knocked it out of the park. It was perfect, but not quite. I say perfect. Then the next take, I gave some feedback, and it was still really good, but it was not quite exactly what I was looking for. And then on this third take, I was like, you know what? Read it as if it's someone who's woken up and somehow they're fully aware that this is their last day on Earth. And he paused for a moment and said, all right, let's do it. And he recorded it and just knocked it out of the park. It was one of my favorite readings. I mean, when he first sent me this poem, I was weeping. I loved it so much. And then the first time I listened to it, front to bottom in the context of the album, I was sobbing all over again. Like this is hands down my favorite poetry track and never fails to affect me. And so what we're going to do now is just kind of listen to what's happening with all of this poetry track mixed in with all of our components, our atmosphere, and all of our melodics. And just because it all comes together in a way that, I think is quite nice.
Dance at the grief, sing at the sorrow, till the world explodes into giant heavens aflame with ecstasy. Burning as wild and free and uncontrollable as comets, each we will finally remember that this is who we are. And a true heaven will dawn.
And then we take everything away, and you're just left with the river and the wind chimes. And they have a little automation on them that slowly brings up their volume throughout this last bit. But it was really to just sort of hammer home that idea of, look, if we all just stop for a moment and let everything else fade away, I think we'd find that we'd be a lot happier, you know? Yeah. So that was Happiness featuring Louis Galindo. Thank you all so much for watching all of these. We got a few more left before we get to the end of the album. But between now and then, keep listening to it, sharing it with your friends, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.
Dance at the grief, sing at the sorrow, till the world explodes into giant heavens aflame with ecstasy. Burning as wild and free and uncontrollable as comets, each sentient being will ascend to unimaginable heights.